What's going on, guys? Pete Nova here with the Face Off Sports Network. I am back today on Friday night, a little bit of a different time than I normally go on. I was not available yesterday. My colleague Michael Hoff did the Start Sit show, so if you guys did tune in, hopefully he did help you out in ahead of that Bills and Texans matchup. But today we're going to go over some of just pretty much Week 12 previews. I'll answer some Start Sit questions as well. So while we're kind of doing the intros here, start kind of sending your questions in. We'll start to pull them. We're going to go game by game, talk about some betting picks and all of that good stuff. But before I do so, I do want to let you guys know I do have a guest. It is my father. I figured I would have him jump on. If none other than myself, he does. I probably got my humor from him, some of my sports knowledge, not the hair, definitely not the hair, but I'm going to pull him up right now. And here
Good
we go.
evening.
So
You also
you
forgot
got
to
Pete.
mention the good looks.
The good looks, the good looks, the good looks. Yes,
Absolutely.
the good looks. Now, Pete, repeat. But my father, like myself, is a Broncos fan, and I would not have him up here if I did not think that he could help you guys out with your picks and your questions as well. So he'll be here helping us out, go over some of these games, some of these questions. And we do have a couple of questions already. So why don't we answer a couple and then we'll get into our first game to preview. We're going to go over probably the top games, the most important fantasy relevant games in conjunction to the questions that you guys send in. And then we'll go over some betting picks and then we'll get you guys out of here. So KJ Frederick comes in and says, Pete, what's going on? What is up with Kenneth Walker? So Kenneth Walker comes in to this week with a lot of steam. And when I say steam, it seems as though many are assuming Kenneth Walker has or is about to take over as the lead back in Seattle. Now, this has been a backfield that has been super frustrating if you're a manager owning Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker. Walker is a guy that you drafted as, a top 5 round pick. Charbonnet was just outside the top 100 picks, and pretty much it's been a dead even heat in terms of the fantasy production, whereas Kenneth Walker's been really just more efficient. He had his second best game of the season against the Rams last week, 17 fantasy points. He had back-to-back weeks so far where he had 14 carries, 16 carries. In 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's had over 14 or more carries. So he's getting volume. It's ticking up. But unfortunately, as everyone, of course, in Kenneth Walker fashion, everyone's starting to get excited about it. And Kenneth Walker pops up with a glute injury and is listed as questionable today. So we'll see how he transitions here. Kenneth Walker is a guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries. He's averaging about 4 games a season missed. That's something to monitor. You don't want to see a guy pop up on the injury report on a Friday this late in the week, especially a guy that's had issues staying healthy. They do have a capable back in Charbonnet, so I don't know that they would push him if it's serious, but we have no indication that it's serious or not. So we'll just have to kind of all brace ourselves, especially if you're a Kenneth Walker owner and you kind of packed your bags, assuming that he was going to take off for this last season, end of season stretch here. But let's get to our next question, which is a start sit question, and it is involving Kenneth Walker. So, Dad, I will kick it to you. Wan'Dale Robinson or Kenneth Walker in a flex PPR league. Wan'Dale is facing the Lions. Darius Slayton ruled out today. That is indoors in a dome. Jackson Dart also ruled out. So it'll be Jameis Winston and the misfits of the New York Giants. And then obviously Kenneth Walker is hobbled, but let's assume that he plays. Do you have a preference on which guy you would start in PPR this week?
I would feel very comfortable going with Wandell because you rely on Walker, and sure, you may get you may get talent, you may get reps, but for whatever reason, Charbonnet will not go away. Does not go away. Continues to get, especially the goal line touches. He seems to be in there. The coaches love him. I don't know if that's going to change. Sure, if Walker is hurt and it's deemed somewhat serious, you may see more of a tilt toward Charbonnet. But Wandale's going to have to catch the ball because they're going to have to throw the ball because the Lions are going to drop a 40 on them. They're a hornet's nest, and there's really not many other options right now on the Giants that they can go to in the passing game. I believe Slayton is out. Is that correct?
Slayton's out. Isaiah Hodgins, they brought him back. But outside of that, they have
Theo Johnson.
Box Collins, the rookie, Theo Johnson, and then obviously you have the pass catchers in the backfield.
Which they don't really throw that much to the backfield guys. So it ends up being, at the end of the day, a lot of catch up. Wandale's going to get 10 to 12 targets, in my opinion. I know that's a big number, but I do believe that, and I think you're better off going that route.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think Wandale, that's not even a crazy number when you factor in since week 7 against Denver, he's had 12, 4, 11, 11, and 9 targets. So he's practically giving us a floor of around 10 targets outside of the game against Philly, where, that was just a disaster of a game in and of itself. And Detroit's 23rd when it comes to points allowed to the wide receiver position. So this is a good matchup for Wandale. Winston likes to push the ball downfield, which is not good for the running backs catching passes. But I would agree. I would say Wandale over Kenneth Walker is where I would lean as well. We have Hoff in here. He sent the super chat and said, Papa Pete, great dude. Hoff
My
did,
man.
yeah, Hoff did drive with you, me, and Hoff. We went to the Fantasy Football Expo last year, and that was a five and a half hour drive.
It was a long drive, and it was great conversation. Mike made it feel like it wasn't that bad. You got in the car, it got a little bit excitable because you just have a tendency not to agree with me, which is fine. That's a son's prerogative. But Mike was there to watch it all, and he got to see my intelligence versus yours.
Well, I recall we had a very, very heated discussion about Cortland Sutton for about an hour.
Which you actually have come out ahead on that since then. Yes.
I think so as well. But I think I remember Hoff was very hungry, and you really wanted us to get home, and we couldn't find a place to eat.
I'm sorry about that.
And we kept trying to stop off. And I think we stopped off at like a gas station, and like something happened where like the food thing was out or something. I don't even remember. It was a disaster.
It was an interesting trip, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good times. Scott's in the house. What's up, Scott? Said, is DK Metcalf a better start with Rudolph over Rodgers? Yeah, so Rodgers, at this point in time, I think he's pretty up in the air. If I had to guess, I think Rodgers is going to play. Rodgers has the wrist injury. It's a fracture in his left wrist. Mike Tomlin said Rodgers would not need surgery. He did wear a brace and was a limited participant on Thursday. And right now he's a questionable for Sunday's game against the Bears. Honestly, I would try to pivot either way on this game, whether it's Rudolph, whether it's Rodgers. I don't know what to expect. If Rodgers is out there, I don't know. It could be a run-heavy game script for them. And I think it's in Chicago, which, it's going to be cold. And now Rodgers is no stranger to playing out in bad weather. But ultimately, I don't know how high scoring this game's going to be. Sorry. It is actually in Pittsburgh. But either way, it's still going to be cold. So I wouldn't be very comfortable starting Metcalf either way. I'm not very high on him this week. I have him ranked. Let's see. I have Metcalf. Let me see. I have Metcalf at 26, right behind Ricky Pearsall. I don't have Metcalf high this week, but I also really like Ricky Pearsall. I have him at 25. So I'm not very confident in Metcalf. Let's move over to the next one here by C-Dub. He said, thoughts on Bryce Young over Dak Prescott? I would much rather Dak. I do like Bryce. I think we get a Bryce game like this every year. I don't know that it'll hold water, but he is also versing San Francisco, who just gave up 450 yards to Jacoby Brissett. So I wouldn't big brain this too much. I feel like we're overthinking it if we start Young over Dak. I know Dak's got the Eagles, but he's at home. What are your thoughts there? Would you have any consideration of starting Bryce over Dak?
Well, I get the perception, right? I think Bryce is going to be on the uptick. Dak against Philly, you lower him in your rankings, but nonetheless, I think there's still a higher floor for Dak because Philly's Philly's defense is really good against the run, and they're going to clog up holes, and he's going to have to throw the ball. The one difference, too, in the case of Arizona, they don't have a running game. Um, in this game, there is a running game for them to rely upon, and it's not going to be on Bryce's shoulders all day long. So I would go with Dak.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. San Francisco, um, San Francisco, Rice is playing against the 49ers. It's in San Fran. San Francisco has been really, really bad at tackling. So I expect a heavy dosage of Rico Dowdle. That defense has been super disappointing with a lot of injuries this year. Scott said, lost London this week. I have Wandale, Judy, Myers. Which would you prefer? So BTJ has been ruled out. So Jacoby Myers definitely gets a bump up there. I'm not really in love with Judy. I know with Shador, Judy comes out with an interview this week, and for what it's worth, he's been a pretty good soldier there this season in terms of not being a distraction. And they've actually said he's been a leader on the team, but he voiced his frustration, it seemed, this week. I don't know if it's because Gabriel is not starting, it's Shador, or maybe he's just tired of the carousel in general. It's his third quarterback this season. But all that to say, I would still play Wandale Robinson. That would be my guy here over Judy, over Jacoby Myers. I know people want to assume it's going to be Jacoby as the number one guy, but they get Brenton Strange back. And also factoring in Parker Washington seems to be a very, very nice safety valve for Trevor Lawrence. They seem to have a good connection. So I wouldn't be so sure that Myers is going to be the guy to pop in this one. So I would prefer Wandale. Do you have a preference on which one out of these three you would prefer?
Well, I think you can easily rule out Judy because Shador Sanders over and under in yardage this week is 159, and that implies that there's just not going to be a lot of yards there in the air. So it does come down to Myers. It comes down to Wandale. And while I do like Myers' talent, he's still getting his footing there. Brenton Strange possibly back as well, which is another
Yeah.
Lawrence favorite. And so I would go with Wandale on that.
Yeah. So we're in alignment there. Scott did come in and say that Seattle said that Walker should be good for the game. Even still, even if Walker is playing, the fact that you could pop up with a quad, the way they've used both guys, I think the one reason I like the idea that Walker could take over this role is because the running game has been so inefficient that eventually maybe the Seattle's just saying, hey, we're about to hit the playoffs. We need to figure out this running game. Is it going to be Charbonnet? Is it going to be Walker? This two-headed monster, which has really not been a monster, is just not working out. And relying on Darnold to be as good as he's been every single week, you worry about him going on the road against defenses that can get him off his spot and provide pressure. So I think they want to get that running game going. But I would be hesitant to start Walker this week. Brock said, should I start Tootin or Spears this week? A-Chain and RJ on a bye, need my RB2. Yeah, so Tootin for the Jags, he was listed on the injury report earlier this week. He was pulled off the injury report. Travis Etienne with the shoulder injury, he I believe might be off the injury report as well,
Yes.
but I have to double check that. He was also in a non-contact jersey to start the week, which I don't really love that. I would prefer Tootin in this one. You could maybe sway me on Spears just off the fact that, Seattle is probably going to build a pretty strong lead against the Titans, and Spears could, kind of be that playing from behind running back. But I think Tootin is going to be in a game where Jacksonville is trying to win. It's going to be a competitive outing. And I think ultimately I would take Tootin against Arizona over Spears. I just think there's more points in that game. You're really looking for cheap points with Tajay Spears. And you're banking on that offense being somewhat capable to do that. And Cam Ward seems to like to push the ball down the field too. So I would prefer Tootin. Do you have a preference on who you prefer here?
It's a tight one. I think it's pretty close. When I'm leaning one way or another, but I can't really make a decision, I like to look at the implied totals. And the implied total for the Titans in this game is 13 points or so. And I think the
Yeah,
Jaguars
pretty low.
a little larger in that area. And before Tootin was injured last Sunday, he looked like he was about to become the lead back. So if both Etienne and Tootin are healthy, there's no reason to think that he's not going to get the lion's share of the touches this week.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And Seattle's defense is really, really good. I think they could they could absolutely destroy them. So the 13-point implied total, you're really, like I said, you're really just hoping for, some really cheap receptions for Spears to give you like a 10-point outing, and maybe he pops a touchdown in there. But I do want to jump to this question. We'll get back to the order. John Verdeau said, "Should I start Higgins or
That
Stephon
is
Diggs
some
in a Gillis?"
icon you got there, though. He looks like
Yeah,
someone
I
from
don't
Gilligan's
know.
Island.
Is it?
Very good, John.
That's more. That would be more your speed than mine. So
That's
I'll
right.
let you take this one. T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, both these guys playing each other. And obviously Jamar Chase is suspended now. We don't know if Burrow's going to play. They did say he was limited, but I think it's partially because they wanted to give Flacco some of the first team reps too in case Burrow doesn't play. But what do you prefer here?
Well, that's a high-scoring game where Cincinnati, if they have any shot to win, are going to have to keep up, right? Because they're not going to stop the Patriots. You have Higgins should be dominating the targets without Chase there. Yoshivas is a consideration, but I wouldn't call him a threat to Higgins. Diggs, I like. I think I'm going with Higgins. I think I'm going with Higgins.
Yeah, I would go with Higgins too. I have Higgins ranked as my ninth ranked receiver. I have Diggs at 10 this week. So, I
You
mean,
have him pretty high. You have
both of
a
these
little
guys
higher than I thought.
pretty high. Yeah, both pretty high. I mean, Diggs against Cincinnati. My biggest concern is Diggs. Patriots get out to a big enough lead that they can get more conservative. Patriots don't really strike me as a team that steps on the throat and is going to try to Dan Campbell this one and try to put a 40 burger on them. But Cincinnati, you expect to be playing from behind almost the entire game exclusively. And even if Cincinnati has a lead, it's not going to be held for long because of how bad the defense is. So it should be close, but not close in that the score will definitely be close. But I would feel more confident in Higgins' game script than I would for Diggs.
Do you
And
also
and
agree?
yeah,
Do you also? I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Do you also agree that Higgins is the much bigger factor in the red zone, where the Patriots seem to have a tendency to be looking at Hunter Henry, to be looking at some of their bigger targets than Diggs?
No, I think it's a good point too. I mean, Matt Collins has stepped up the last couple of weeks with Boutte being out. I don't know if Boutte is playing or not. I'd have to take a look at that. But no, I think it's a good point. And you also factor in Ramondre Stevenson. It looks like he's trending to play, which is another player that they like there at the goal line, which is a bummer because, I mean, quite honestly, if Stevenson didn't play, I think Trevor Henderson would be locked in for me as a top 10 play against Cincinnati. But with Stevenson coming back, Henderson probably drops somewhere around 20 for me just because I don't know what the workload is. But one of those guys is probably going to have a monster day. It's just a matter of which one. And both guys could have maybe a serviceable day. It wouldn't surprise me if he came out of this one and both guys had 15 points at the running back position there. Did you have any other thoughts before we move on to the next one?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. And John, come back with a better picture, please. You're killing me. I love this one.
Dickey.
Little
Yeah,
puppy.
Dickey's got a good picture. Hoff always likes this Dickey's questions because
Go.
or I thought it was Iggy, but maybe you changed the name.
Icky,
But
Iggy.
said Jags defense or pick up the Raiders, sit one, Kyron Jamo or Henderson. So for the defense, yeah, I'm really high on the Raiders this week. Jags were also a streamer for myself as well. We did hit on the Texans last night. I had the Texans ranked ninth. Consensus had them at 18. I did have the Bills at 11. We were saved with that Ray Davis kickoff for a touchdown there, so that definitely helped save the day. But ultimately, I had the Jags at 14. I have the Raiders at 7. I know Raiders seem a little sketchy, but Shador not projected to go over 200 yards. I think it's a really, really gross game. I think you're probably looking at 30 points right? Like the total is a little higher than that. I think it's 35, but I think ultimately you're probably looking at like a 13-17 game or something like that. It would not surprise me. And ultimately, I think we could see, Max Crosby take over this game. This Browns offensive line's been kind of bad this year, which is surprising because that's been a strength of them for a long time. Now I'll let you take the second half of this question. Kyren Williams, Jameson Williams, Henderson. Jameson Williams with a little bit of a revitalization here with the fact that Campbell is now taking over play calling, and he's had 2 back-to-back big weeks ever since Campbell has taken over the offensive play calls. Henderson, you have Stevenson coming back. Kyron's obviously pretty much, this seems like his role is the most secure of the three. What guy would you sit here out of these guys, assuming, and he said it is PPR, so.
I am sitting Kyron. I don't like playing running backs against that Tampa front seven. They shut it down every time. And I think a coach like McVay, he's actually going to play the pass first, run after. If their passing game can open up the running game, fine. But he's not going to keep running Kyron into that front seven so they can go 3 and out. So Kyron would be the guy I would reluctantly sit.
I'm surprised you didn't say Henderson. Do you feel confident?
I love you, and I know
Henderson?
how much you love Travion. I didn't want to do that.
I'm just curious. Do you think Henderson's gonna have a big role in this game, or do you think Stevenson takes a big chunk back?
I think that it's going to be 60-40 one way or the other, but I think Henderson can do a lot with a little, and he's going to get more than a little right now. I don't see that in the Kyron Williams type role for this Sunday. I'll also go back for a second and talk about the Raiders. The one thing, and I am not a Raider fan, I'm a Bronco fan, but the one thing I do notice about the Raiders is when their offense can stay on the field a little longer than they normally do, the defense gets to rest and they get to play. And I don't think they're going to be on the field a lot against Shador. I'm pretty sure I would take some Big 12 defenses to play against the Browns. I would be rolling with the Raiders with confidence.
Yeah, I would too, and I think it's a fair point. I worry about Ashton Genty this week against the Browns. I don't have him very high. This question's tough though. I mean, with Kyron, you're really looking at, hey, safe floor. You're probably getting somewhere around, Kyron, you're probably feeling, hey, you're getting somewhere around 13, 15 points, right? Probably not a blow up game, but safe, right? Jameson Williams is one of those where the good news is, while he's going to be in a game script that, is against a team that they're probably going to, beat up on pretty bad, we know the Lions have no issue running up a score, right? So I'm not worried that JMO gets game scripted out. Kyron and Henderson, it's really between the two here for me. I still prefer Kyron here. I would go Kyron over Henderson off of the reason of just I don't trust Mike Vrabel. I love Henderson. It's been a great run for the last couple weeks. I need Henderson to be better than Kyron this week in a lot of spots. That'd be great. But I do worry. I'll take the bell cow running back in most of these situations. Bell cow running back in a top offense, I'll take that 9 times out of 10 over, a running back that we're looking at possibly splitting time, even if the matchup is really good. So that's my kind of pushback there. But do you have anything else you want to add there to anything I said, or are you ready to move on?
No, those are fair. Your points are fair. So it's, if you're risk averse, then you're going to go with Kyron. If you're willing to gamble, then you're going to go with Travion.
I think that's fair. All right, let's take a look at Steven Drake's. What's going on, man? $5 super chat said, Nico got me. Yeah, Nico got a lot of us.
Got a lot of people.
Yeah, Nico, it's actually was probably the worst game that he's had with Davis Mills prior to last night. With Davis Mills, I mean, he had 75 yards on 7 catches against Denver. He had 7 for 136 against Jacksonville. Then he had 9 for 92 and a touchdown versus Tennessee. And then last night, 3 for 55, only 3 targets. He did get banged up a little bit in that game too. And then it just really kind of, the ball just started getting spread around to everybody else. I don't even remember if he got if he came back in that game. I'd have to take a look. For some reason it just felt like he disappeared after that injury. But to the initial question here, he said, would you flex Michael Wilson or Tyler Warren? I'm playing against Trey McBride. Also, Dak or Burrow if he plays. Thanks, fellas. So I'll let you go to the Dak or Burrow question first, and then we'll go to the Michael Wilson Warren, because while I think it sounds, if you told somebody, before the season started that this would be a real question, they'd probably laugh at you.
No,
But it is a
I
real
think it's fascinating. I think it's a really tough choice. So going to the Dak or Burrow, um, how much rust can we expect from Joe Burrow, especially without Chase there? Chase is his security blanket. Chase is everything to him, right? From the college days to the pro days, they don't need anything to get the rapport back to where it always is. But what about the rest of the team? I don't really know. So again, I think that Dak is going to have to score some points. I think there's a higher floor there. Although I understand the appeal to rush Burrow back. If you have him on your roster, you've been sitting, you've been waiting, and now is your time, right? But I don't know that this is the spot. I would go with Dak.
Okay. Yeah, I would go with Dak too. I think Dak is the right play. It's also indoors. I mean, you love the fact that it's indoors. This time of the year, weather is such a factor. So that matters as well. And yeah, I mean, this is also a Patriots defense that's no joke. I mean, they're a good unit. And so I would go with Dak. I don't know how much more upside Burrow has. Like, if we're talking, you know, like one of these guys could blow up, I don't look at Burrow and say he could have a blow up spot here. I could see Dak in a game against a divisional opponent, must win for them to keep their playoff chances alive, and a very familiar opponent. I could see Dak putting up a 20-point game, even though it's a tough matchup.
And here's the other side of that coin. We're assuming that the Eagles are not going to be that strong offensively just because they've been struggling. What better defense to get healthy? And I know the Cowboys have made some moves and they've gotten better, but what better defense to get healthy than against Dallas? And maybe they start throwing it up. And this could very easily become one of these 34-31 games.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for the Eagles only to imagine that, only because the offense has just been so tough. But as you noted, right, it is the Cowboys. Their defense has been a little bit better after the acquisitions. You get Logan Wilson, you get Quinn Williams. They've been a little bit better. But again, this is a Cowboys offense that has so many weapons, so many weapons. They're going to force the Eagles to have to throw the football, and I could see this being a game that goes. Yeah, I could see 50 points being scored in this game. Now let's go back to Michael Wilson and Tyler Warren here. Tyler Warren takes on the Chiefs. They're on the road. Chiefs have not been nearly as good. I think they've lost the two losses they have this year are outdoors, and those are the games where their offense hasn't looked as good. Now they take on the Chiefs. Chiefs right now 16.67 fantasy points to the tight end position over the last 4 weeks. They've given up a total of 19 receptions on 23 targets for 250 yards and a touchdown, right? So the Chiefs defense has been kind of favorable to the tight end position. Now you have Michael Wilson with no Marvin Harrison after Michael Wilson has a unicorn game last week against San Francisco. But let's be honest. I mean, Jacoby Brissett threw for 450. I mean, the 49ers secondary looks atrocious. I sit here today thinking about the fact that Michael Wilson now thrusted into this wide receiver one position, and is he going to throw up on himself, or is he going to rise up to the occasion like we saw last week? I'm going with Tyler Warren here. I think Jacksonville's defense much, much better. While the secondary is not phenomenal, they're still much better than the 49ers. I don't think Michael Wilson does what he did last week in this game. And keeping in mind, 49ers put up a lot of points, a lot of points. They were pretty much having to throw from behind the entire game. I don't expect that to be this way. I think there's a possibility that this game is close and they're not going to have to throw it. Trey Benson, I don't think is coming back this week, though he was practicing. It is going to likely be Bam Knight. So the running game is a little sketchy, but I'm still going to go with Tyler Warren coming off of a bye. They had extra time to prepare for the Chiefs. Chiefs have not been that great against the tight end position, and I could absolutely see Michael Wilson coming down to earth in this game. So I'm going to go with Warren in a game that I think will be competitive, and I think he's got a good matchup.
I agree with that assessment, although I am absolutely fascinated with Michael Wilson. I'm fascinated with the guy's been doing nothing forever and then shows up with a quarterback who can push the ball downfield a little bit, and he becomes Marvin Harrison Sr., not Jr. I think there's more to Michael Wilson than meets the eye, but I would also go with Warren this week.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're on the same page. As always, Stephen, appreciate the super chat. John said, I can always appreciate I'm the expert. Thanks, boys. Thanks for popping in.
Thank you, John.
Zach Lynn's in the house. What's going on, Zach? Let's see. Let me scroll back here to get to a couple of these questions. Jose Rodriguez says drop Bucky Irving. No, I mean, unless you're in a really shallow league.
No.
Yeah. Looks like Bucky's returning week 13. I'll believe it when I see it. Todd Bowles has been really bad when it comes to when it comes to just coach speak in general.
I do think that's going to happen. I'll just say real quickly because
go ahead.
He's had enough time with the kind of injury he's had to recover at this point. He is practicing. I believe he practiced yesterday, maybe in a limited, but he's practicing. And I think what Tucker and White give the Buccaneers is what Bucky Irving gives and doesn't have to come off the field. You have White, who's a good pass blocker, decent catcher. You have Tucker, who runs the ball between the tackles better. Bucky does both. They're definitely missing that, of course, along with missing Mike Evans, but they do need Bucky back in a bad way.
Yeah, I agree. Slayton is off the injury report. Okay, yeah, so I must have read that wrong. Either way, I still like Wandale this week, but it is still a big. That is big to hear. So I must have read that wrong. Let's see, Kenny, what's up, man? Said Quinshon Judkins or Sean Tucker. Judkins has been killing me recently. Kenny. Yeah, I would still go with Judkins in this one. I think the volume's going to be there. I worry about Sean Tucker a little bit, only because game script wise, this is an offense in the Rams that is much better than Buffalo. And that's crazy to say and to make a slight against Buffalo. That offense is not very good. I think Rachaad White is going to see much more time than he saw last week. While I like Tucker, this is a weird coaching staff. I don't think that this is just Sean Tucker's job right now until Bucky comes back. So I would go with Judkins, even though I don't love the matchup either. I think for Shador, they're going to lean on Judkins to handle a lot of volume in this one. So, and I'm not worried that he's going to split volume as much as I am with Tucker, but Tucker's going to be in a game where you're probably expecting some points. So I get that, right? There's a world where he scores a touchdown. Judkins, you're praying for a touchdown. Do you prefer Judkins or do you prefer Tucker?
I would. He has a higher floor for sure. Judkins is touching the ball 20 to 25 times tomorrow. You also know he's quite capable of busting a 50-yarder. Now, I know Tucker did that last week as well, and he's certainly capable, but there are other mouths to feed, namely Rachaad White. And if it becomes more of a shootout and a passing game, White's going to be in there more than Tucker is.
And keep in mind, Chris Godwin looks like he's trending to play, so that gives another option in the pass game as well. And Raiders' run defense is not very good. So Judkins can definitely pop one against them. Darius Slayton or Darnell Mooney from Lamont. I think this is interesting. I almost want to say Slayton because I honestly feel like I trust Slayton more because of the game script and because of the quarterback. I trust Winston more than Cousins right now, which is crazy to say, but I think I would go with Slayton over Darnell Mooney. I don't know, man. Like, I think that offense could look a lot different with Cousins there now that it's not Penix, and Slayton is going to be in a game script where they're passing. I don't know how much they're going to have to throw the ball for Atlanta against the Saints in this matchup.
I would say this, Lamont, if you have other options and you can type them in and let us know, I'd love to hear them because you're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. But if this is the only two that you can go with Slayton because he can very easily get you a 50-yard catch and save your day. I've lost all faith in Darnell Mooney. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Which is, I think the NFL has a little bit of an issue with these injury reports. They was reported, we found out like 2 weeks ago that Mooney actually broke his collarbone in training camp, and we thought, and he was like day to day for like a month. So I hope they get a handle on that. But TCB said Tootin versus Tucker this week. Tootin off the injury report and a better matchup, but ETN healthy too. Tucker has a tough matchup and scared that Whiteout snapped him even last week. I think that's pretty fair. I'm going to let you answer this one first because I need some time to think about it.
Thanks. I would give this slight lean to Tootin, and I am not saying this confidently here, but I do believe, for the reasons stated earlier, Tootin should be the lead Sunday, provided they're both healthy, ETN and Tootin, which they seem to be. I believe he's also more likely to get into the end zone. But hey, I understand the attraction with Tucker, home run hitter. Look at what he did last week, shiny new toy type of thing. But I would lean towards Tootin.
Okay. John Santiago said, and I would go with Tootin as well. I don't have much to add. I would have probably been redundant and said the same thing. Jonathan Santiago said, thoughts on Luther Burden rest of the season. Think he could get a bigger role if he moves into the slot over Zacchaeus. So the reason I'm laughing is because we were talking a little bit earlier today. This specifically. So why don't you answer this one and give us your thoughts, and I'll piggyback on that.
So, John, I went to school with a John Santiago in high school. If it's you, buddy, give me a call. As far as Luther, I'm trying to trade Luther in my league, so I've been pimping out the fact that Luther is now taking over the slot over Zacchaeus, and that looks to be the move right now. But in question for your question, the role is coming, and the confidence is growing. But DJ Moore is not going to go anywhere. He's got scripted plays that he is locked into. It won't be this year. Burden is a big guy for the future and for dynasty leagues. But for now, you're probably close to the top. He's going to get a couple of shots every week, deep shots. But those are not the kind of things you want to rely upon on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, this is a guy that unless there's an injury, you're never going to start him confidently rest of the season. They don't have plus matchups the rest of the year except San Francisco in the championship game. It's really this week against Pittsburgh, and then it's really, Philly, Green Bay, Cleveland, Green Bay. It's not great matchups for Burden. I think he's a fine stash if you have the room on your bench in case there is an injury. But I wouldn't say that there's going to be a Jaden Higgins type of week where, hey, you feel confident starting him. Jaden Higgins is stringing together a couple good weeks before this week, so it made sense. While Burden's role is growing, I don't think it's going to be a consistent. Now, if you told me, hey, Cincinnati Bengals this week, would you throw out Luther Burden out there? I might say, yeah. I mean, if you're starting, if it's a 3 wide receiver league and you don't have a lot of options, you might consider it at that point. But TCB said also, shout out to the DST videos, help me stream every single week. Yeah, man, appreciate that. Thank you so much for the support. I did just drop my playoff video earlier this week. If you want to check that out, I gave a lot of different scenarios. I pretty much gave my top 5 defenses for the playoffs and defense that you can match with them in case, you want to stash one and play the matchups. And I showed the schedules and everything. So if you haven't checked it out, check that out. It did just drop earlier this week. Trone, what's going on? Said, with Dart out, would you pick up Lawrence versus the Cardinals, Love versus the Vikings, or Tyler Shuck versus the Falcons? I have Chris Olave. Lawrence versus the Cardinals, Love versus the Vikings, Shuck versus the Falcons. I mean, I don't really love the options either way. I wouldn't start Shuck against the Falcons. I don't know what defense is gonna show up for the Falcons. Ironically, I did see a funny post that shared that Tyler Shuck has doubled his fantasy points every single week so far that he started. He went from like 4 to 10 to 20. He gets Atlanta. I have him ranked 20 this week. Trevor Lawrence I have ranked 15 this week, and Jordan Love I have 16 this week. I would go Trevor Lawrence. I think the matchup is better. I think it'll be a more competitive game back and forth. Jordan Love against Minnesota. I talked about it. I made Minnesota was one of my streams this week as well as a deep play for defense. Brian Flores has Jordan Love is like two and two against Brian Flores. He's either been really good or really bad. There hasn't really been much in between. We saw him get picked off 3 times against Flores the first game of their first matchup last year, and then we saw a very conservative game for Love at the end of the season where he threw for like 100 and I think 150 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So I wouldn't want to start Love if I could avoid it. I would start Trevor Lawrence. That game's going to be indoors. I think it's going to be higher scoring, and he's got the rushing upside. So that would be my lean there. Do you agree with that assessment, or do you have
Yeah,
a do you have
I wouldn't add anything. The one thing I would say is, and I also have a question for you. I would say this about Minnesota: uh, expectations were a lot higher, and I feel like that week of practice on both sides of the ball must have been really rough because I think things are going on in Viking land that nobody was expecting, and maybe they should have with a rookie quarterback. But one thing they were expecting was that defense to be good, and it's been
yeah
spotty. You know,
yeah?
one week they're good, next week they don't look good. So I think this is the week where they bow their necks and come after him. And do you ever get the feeling that LaFleur just doesn't trust Love? Now I know Jacobs might not be there, but
Yeah.
LaFleur just never takes the reins off of Love.
I honestly think Love has. I think it's a very similar relationship from Bo Nix and Peyton than it is Love and LaFleur. I think when they take the reins off of Love, he can look really, really awesome, but he also is a gunslinger. Like he takes a lot of chances. You're gonna live and die with his mistakes, and then you see them kind of rein him in for a couple of games, and it's almost a very conservative, game plan. I know a lot of people don't love LaFleur. They feel like he's, kind of underachieved. I don't agree. But to your point, I definitely think they have been conservative. I also would say this is a big week for JJ McCarthy. It's not make or break for him. I think we need to pump the brakes just a little bit and just remember that, while we expected him to be better, I also would say it's mechanics for him right now. I mean, he looks like a pitcher throwing the football, and while expectations were high, he's got a lot of good players around him. I would say it is concerning, but I'm not ready to kind of, throw the baby out with the bathwater with him, because he's still like the youngest quarterback, I think, in the NFL. The problem that you have with JJ McCarthy is he's on a team with a lot of veterans. It's a very old roster. Those guys were last year very close to a Super Bowl. Now we're sitting here and you have to tell these veterans, hey, you know, we have to live and die with the growing pains. Next year is not going to be a rebuild, but we're still kind of like they may have to slightly rebuild because next year, depending on how things go, because they have a very old roster. So that is a little bit of my concerns there. But overall, this is a big week for JJ McCarthy to silence the haters a little bit, and kind of come out against a tough defense and keep their playoff chance alive. Last thing I'll say about the defense, they've been up and down for the Vikings. They have dealt with a lot of injuries. Jonathan Grenard, Van Ginkel, they've kind of been up and down with a lot of injuries. So, but Flores does get the most out of a lot of his guys, which we'll see we'll see. But I'm with you. I think this is a week that defense comes to play. I don't know about the offense. Now, let's move over to Wandier, who said start to ETN Swift or Judkins this week. I happen to be a little bit higher on Swift than some are. I know he's playing Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh, I know the defense has been solid, but I still feel a solid game coming from Swift. I have him as my RB19 this week. I have Travis Etienne at 21. I have Quinshon Judkins at 23. So Judkins would be my sit here. If you want a really, really safe floor, sure, go with Judkins. But I think Etienne and I think Swift are the higher upside plays. Swift is the lock for me, and you can go between Judkins and Etienne and pick your flavor there. If you want the bell cow with a lower floor, Judkins. If you want maybe a guy that's going to be in more of a timeshare, but it is in a better offense and a higher scoring game, you go ETN. You? Oh, did we lose you? I think we lost him. So I'm going to pull him down for a second and see if he unfreezes at some point. Let's see. Next question here from R said Mooney or Dobbs, bro, and Tune or Michael Porter Jr. Michael Pittman Jr. I don't know why I said Michael Porter Jr. Yeah, I would go with Romeo Dobbs over Mooney for myself, and then Tune or Michael Pittman Jr. Pittman's been so consistent. I think if you want a safe play, you go with Pittman, and if you want an upside play, you go with Tootin. That would be my lean there. We'll keep rolling and see if he comes back, and if not, I'll have to finish this one out. Zach Linton said, do I pick up Winston with Dart out or just play Rome or ETN in the super flex spot? Oh, man. I would go with Winston. I think high scoring game. I would go with Winston. That would be my lean there. I think he's gonna have to. I think you're gonna live and die with some turnovers from Winston. I like the Lions defense a lot this week, but I would still go with Winston. Rome's usage has been a little bit strange this year, or at least the last couple of weeks. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But that would be my lean. I would go with Winston. Kerbo in the house said trying to decide between Tracy Addison and White for my final flex spot, half point PPR. Man, let me take a look here. Hold on. Let me see. Let's see. Hold on one second. Hang on. All right. So Addison White, final flex spot. It's between for me. It's between White and Tracy in a half point PPR here. I would go with Rashad White over Tracy, especially because it's half point PPR. Tracy, I think, will catch some passes, but I would go with White. I trust him more in a half point PPR. All right, are you back?
I'm back.
All right, there you go. Do you want to answer this one? So it's a half point PPR. He said Tracy Addison, Rashad White in the final flex spot. I said I would go Rashad White. I just think Tracy in a half point PPR kind of takes away some of his value of what he does. And I think White is the more likely guy to score a touchdown. I don't know how much I want to start Addison. He's been after a really hot stretch when he came back from suspension, he's cooled off with JJ. And a lot of the volume seems to go to Jefferson. I think he's going to hyper focus on Jefferson to make sure he's happy.
I agree with that. There's no way I could start Addison at this point. I think for whatever reason, that offense is broken. So until further notice, stay away from everyone not named Justin Jefferson and maybe Aaron Jones. But yeah, I think I would go with White in this scenario.
Are you okay? And you cut out a little bit there.
Your mom sabotaged the laptop. She didn't tell me it would die in an hour, so I didn't take the plug.
Oh, it died. Okay, I thought maybe your connection dropped.
No.
Cool. All right, Sean Forrest said, bad night for Nico, but at least my opponent had Josh Allen. That is very true. I had an opponent. His name is John, who had Josh Allen as well. Paul Latz said, tough night if you had Nico and Josh. And it looks like he did. He said, and then another Paul, this is a different Paul, Said, hey guys, would you start Daniel Jones or pick up Jacoby Brissett? I am very high on Jacoby Brissett this week.
Okay.
Possibly too high.
What has
But
happened to
I have
Jacoby
Jacoby
Brissett?
Brissett.
Tell
What do
me.
you say?
What has happened to Jacoby Brissett that he is now a competent quarterback that people want to use in fantasy? Because that has not been the case in over a decade.
Well, run game is not good, and he's going up against a good matchup. Jacksonville's in terms of this week. Jacksonville's defense. I know we talked about Jacksonville before, and I said, I said Jacksonville wasn't the better matchup. I think it was the Tyler Warren question with Michael Wilson. But the connection with him and Trey McBride is awesome. When you have Trey McBride as a safety blanket, and you can just pepper him. I mean,
Makes up for a
he'll make
multitude
it
of
look
sins.
good.
Sure.
Yeah. But I have Daniel Jones as quarterback 14 against Kansas City. I worry that one's going to be outdoors. Daniel Jones has not been good the last 2 weeks. Kansas City backs against the wall. They're traveling to KC. I prefer Jacoby indoors at home versus Jacksonville. Much, much better, matchup for him. I have him as my quarterback 11. I have Daniel Jones at quarterback 14 this week.
It's definitely compelling. I'm not gonna say you're wrong on this. I think I'm just gonna abstain, and you're the expert.
So you prefer Jones?
It's Jones has looked really good up until the last few weeks. Jones doesn't play well outdoors, or he hasn't played enough outdoors to really make a determination of whether he can. I mean, I think the Chiefs are a hornet's nest this week. I don't care what anyone says. The Chiefs, and when you ask for your 3 picks at the end of the night, I'm going to tell you the Chiefs, and the Chiefs, because I think they win by 14 at least. Now, how that breaks down, I don't know, but I know that's a pissed off team. So from that scenario, I certainly understand why you'd want to go with Jacoby.
Okay, fair enough. Paul Latt said Dynasty League. Kyle Monungai for a second round pick. Have we seen enough? I would say no. I'm not giving up a second for Monungai. I think Monungai's looked good, but concerning to give up a 2 for him. Here's the thing. Draft capital is very light with Kyle Monungai. We're talking about a 7th round pick. This coaching staff not super invested in him, or at least the front office financially and draft capital wise. I think they're probably likely going to bring somebody in, possibly if Swift is gone. And even if they don't, I just don't think I could justify giving up a second round pick for Monungai. He's looked really good. The most I would give up is a 3 or maybe a player swap for him and for somebody else. But I don't think so. Am I crazy here? I mean, have you seen? I love Monungai.
I'm on the other side of this. I'm assuming a second round rookie pick is going to be somewhere between 13 and 24. Monungai has shown you what he can do already in a Ben Johnson offense, although you've seen a very limited amount. I don't think they're in love with Swift. I think Swift is more of the bridge to get to Monungai. Sure, another running back could pop up. That you can't predict. It's possible. But if it's a second round pick, sure. Or I mean, maybe you can massage it and say, how about Monungai and a 4 for a second rounder? Or, you kind of get a pick back, a lower pick as well in the deal.
Yeah, I would feel better if you
you're on this.
I'd feel better if you could get a pick back, but I'd still say no. And I love Monungai. I've got him in a lot of spots. I just think a second round pick, you could get better players. You could probably get Alvin Kamara for a second round rookie pick right now. With that schedule rest of the season, obviously long term with Kamara, you're probably not excited about that. But if you're trading a 2 for Monungai, it's probably because you're competing this year. And I think there's better players you can give up a 2 for than Monungai. That's just how I look at it.
That's fair.
But we're not going to always agree. That's okay. Chad said RB2 needed. Breece Hall, Charbonnet, Sean Tucker. Breece Hall going up against Baltimore. Charbonnet, I'm not starting Charbonnet. He's definitely the obvious out here for me. Sean Tucker, Breece Hall. I'm still going to go Breece Hall. Tyrod Taylor going to be out there. I know it's looked tough, but they don't really have much there with the Jets. And Breece is a guy that I trust can break one. He is the guy that's going to get the bell cow work. I don't know about Sean Tucker, but I'll take Breece Hall here. I don't love any of these guys, though, this week.
Yeah, I think the Ravens defense has improved from earlier on in the season, but they're not locked down where I'm trying to run away from them.
Yeah.
I would go to Hall as well.
Couple more questions here, and then we're going to get out of here. Let's check and see if we have anything. So R said, "Great show so far, guys." Albert's in the house.
Thank you,
What's going
R.
on, Albert?
Al?
R said, "Appreciate it." He said he stashed Tampa. Good stuff.
Nice.
Chad said, "Pick up or set." Paul,
There you go, Chad.
we have a couple of questions here. We can rip through what's the rest.
Sure.
Jared Fortin said, "Would you drop Vidal for Mason in PPR redraft?" I would actually keep Vidal here only because with Mason, I know if Aaron Jones gets hurt, Mason's role, even as the quote unquote starter, is not high value. He's not going to catch the ball much. That offense is not as good as the Chargers. So I would keep Vidal, even though there's a likely chance that, Hampton's back soon and his role gets relegated to like a 30% snap share. But I would rather Vidal because I think he's the better player to have if the starter goes down.
I would agree with that with the one caveat. If you have Aaron Jones, pick up Mason.
Yeah, fair enough. Zahaf said, "Would you drop Vidal for Tootin?" I would. I don't even need to answer read the rest here. I would. Yeah. Kenny said, "Appreciate it, boys. Just to add, I've noticed that they don't play Judkins much on third down in 2 minutes. So while he doesn't share the carries, they do took him off the field more than I like to see." That is the tough thing with Judkins right now, and that's what's holding him back this year. The good news is that the Raiders only could muster about 16 points against the Cowboys last week, and this is a much tougher defense. So game script should keep this one in check for Judkins to stay on the field more. That's how I would read it.
But that's a valid point, Kenny.
Yeah. Let's see. With Dart out, would you rather? Oh, we answered this one. I think he sent it in again. But yes, we would say Brissett. And then we have 3 more questions here, and then we're going to get to some of our best picks, and we'll get out of here. Torin Bree said Henry or Pitts this week. I'm going with Hunter Henry against that Cincinnati defense. Hunter Henry's pretty high in my rankings this week. I have him at 6. Kyle Pitts I have at 7. If you're very convicted that you like Pitts more than Henry, go with Pitts because I don't have it clear cut such a big difference, but I prefer Henry over Pitts. Pitts against the Saints, and then Henry against Cincinnati. What about you?
I agree with that, but let's back up for 1 minute. I think the previous question is a little different. That it says with Dart out, would you prefer Brissett, Jones, or Burrow? I think there's a little
Burrow wasn't in there.
Yeah. So, man, I would in this scenario, I would be rolling with Joe Burrow if he's playing, unless there's anything in his reports that give you some fear. I didn't look at today's practice schedule and what he logged or didn't log. But if he was a full practice,
it was a limited today, but he was full practice the other day. I don't think I think it's due not because he had a setback. I think it just had to do with they wanted Flacco to get first team reps as well, just in case Burrow doesn't play. If I had to guess.
Well, so in this scenario, if Burrow's there, I would rank him Burrow, Brissett, and Jones. But you know how I feel between Brissett and Jones.
Yeah. Okay. And then Henry or Pitts, who do you prefer?
I would go with Henry. I'm sick of hearing the Pitts talent because the talent doesn't materialize. And Cousins was the quarterback there with Pitts, and he didn't use him either.
That is a good point. They do not have a great connection. We saw that. Let's see. George said, need a defense this week. Pat's defense can't seem to get more than 6 to 8 points a week, which is killing me. Options are Pats, Jags, Steelers. I will say Pat's at 6 this week. That's where I ranked them. They're going to drop if Burrow plays. That is for sure. If it's Flacco and there's no Jamar Chase, I worry that Higgins could get locked up a little bit against Christian Gonzalez, and Flacco has to hold the ball longer, leading to some sacks. But Burrow might not be that mobile either. Now, if you're talking Pats, Jags, Steelers, and you really don't want to go with the Pats, I would go with the Jags. I don't have the Steelers extremely high this week. I have them at 16 against Chicago. But I would go with the Pats still. I get it's frustrating if you're looking for the upside play, go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Before last week, Jacoby Brissett was averaging 5 sacks a game through 3 weeks. So I still prefer the Pats, but if you're looking for the riskier play with the higher upside, I go with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So are you preferring the Pats even with Burrow there?
Yes. Even if Burrow plays, I'd still take Pats over Jags.
I think I'd go Jags without Burrow playing, and if Burrow I'm sorry, Jags if Burrow is playing, and the Pats if Flacco is starting.
That's fair. George also said, then at the flex, half PPR, do I go Pearsall or Alec Pierce? Ooh,
Boy.
man. Half PPR is interesting because we know Pierce does not get the volume, but he gets the big play, deep shots. I have Alec Pierce at 27 this week. I have Ricky Pearsall at 23. I'm going with Ricky Pearsall against Carolina. I think last week, I know it wasn't a great outing, but I also think they're ramping him up slowly. I think he's going to be much more involved. I think this is a smash play against Carolina this week. I really, really like him. So I would go with Pearsall.
I can get with that.
Okay. Two more, then we're getting out of here with our questions and with our biggest plays. Be growing stuff. What's going on, man? Said I traded away Kenneth Walker for Olave. I'm hurting a wide receiver. My running backs are Gibbs, Judkins, Chase Brown, Marks, Spears. I think you're fine. Running backs are fine. Kenneth Walker for Olave is a steal. I guess somebody probably bought into the hype that Walker might get the starting job. Olave's been awesome. And the nice thing with Shaheed being gone, he's the only guy there really at the wide receiver position. And Shuck kind of pushed the ball downfield a little bit to Olave. We weren't seeing Olave catch passes downfield when it was Spencer Rattler and when Shaheed was there. So I think you're in a great spot. I love Chase Brown rest of the season as an RB2. I think that's fine. And Judkins as a flex RB3 is good too. I prefer Brown over Judkins rest of the season. I think you're in a really good spot. That's a great trade.
I agree with all of that. I would say this for you deeper league players. If you have a spot, I would stash Devon Vele. That's the only thing I would add.
I mean,
his snap share is going up. It hasn't produced yet. The Saints are in a position where they always have to throw the ball. I think he could be a sneaky stash for down the stretch.
Yeah, and I mean, Vele definitely got some reps with Shuck as well. With the second team, especially coming into the season. And keeping in mind, Saints are going to be in a position where they're going to have to try to see what they have. They trade a 4th-round pick for Vele, so I think that's fair. Sean Tucker, Alec Pierce this week. I would go with Sean Tucker over Alec Pierce.
Pierce has been really good, but I agree. I don't think there's going to be a lot of effective deep shots in Kansas City in the cold, and that's Pierce's specialty. I would go with Tucker.
Let's see. Guys, another thought. Remember, Burrow wasn't great in the start of the season. It could be the same first game back after a bad injury. Yeah, I also don't think he's going to be super mobile, but they're going to probably have to play from behind. So that could lead to some points. Last one here, then I'm going to ask you for your best picks on the week. Juwan or Theo this week? So Theo Johnson against the Lions, Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson. Yeah. Juwan Johnson against Atlanta. I would go with Theo against Detroit. I have Theo at 12. I have Juwan Johnson at 14 this week.
I'm going to go with Juwan because I think he's a little more consistent. Theo shows up, you buy in, and then all of a sudden he's 2 catches for 23 yards. There's no consistency there. I know that there are mouths to feed in the more mouths to feed in the Saints offense than the Giants offense, amazingly enough. However, I believe Juwan is the bigger target, better target, and we'll get more looks.
All right, let's go over to our favorite plays of the week. So what are your favorite plays of the week?
So I told you the first one. I love the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to put a hurt on. It's now or never for them, and that's talking about the postseason, which is amazing. It's amazing to say that, but you knew the bubble was going to burst at some point. This is the week. I think they hang around because of their pedigree. I think the Colts coming into cold weather, they've only played there twice this year in cold weather games. And I think that, Jones is on a downward trend, and I love Spagnuolo's defense. He's just a great technician. Him and Vic Fangio are the guys that you want to emulate when you're looking at defensive coordinators, with a shout out to Vance Joseph. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but those are the guys that you want to. And so I think he's going to dial up something real special for Daniel Jones this week. So that's my first one. Do you want the rest of them now?
So that's the money line on them?
I would lay the I think it's 3.5 at this point. Might be 4 now.
They're +3 at home. Oh no, they're -3.5. -3.5.
Yeah, they're -3.5.
Yeah, but that's minus
that tells
105
you a lot too, doesn't it? I mean, you have a 9-2 team coming into a 6-5 house, and they're getting
Off
points.
a bye.
Yeah, right.
Off a bye too.
The second place I would go would be on a player prop of Devontae Adams over 62.5 yards. He's going up against Ben. I think is it Ben Adams? I don't forget the defensive back's name, but nonetheless, I think Tampa is a typical tough run defense, not a good passing defense, and Stafford just gets Adams involved. Even I think last week he had 1 yard and a touchdown. Devontae Adams, he still had 8 targets. They're going to throw him the ball. That's all. That is what they do. And he's a technician, great route runner. I don't have to say too much about that. So I like Adams over the 62.5 yards. The last place I'll go is Chase Brown under 56 yards rushing versus the Patriots. I think Brown will be heavily involved in the passing game, but I think they're going to have to abandon the run game fairly quickly against the Patriots because there's going to be a lot of points in that game. And I could see the Patriots getting out to a big lead early and them having to play catch up and not running the ball much at all.
Okay. Yeah, I like the Chase Brown play. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm with you with the Chiefs. I think they win that one. I don't know that I'd lay the points. I probably think I'd take the money line instead and parlay them
that's why
on something else.
You like to lay those
no, you're laying the points. I said I'd take the money line.
Well, you're laying on the money line. They're minus.
I know. Fair enough. But my best plays of the week, I like Derrick Henry, 84.5 rushing yards. We're at that point in the year. He's taking on the Jets. Jets, their will is kind of crumbling a little bit at this point. This is where Derrick Henry starts to kind of heat up, and people do not want to tackle this guy at this point in the season. So I like Derrick Henry, 84.5 rushing yards at minus 110. That would be my play. You can actually get him at 80 rushing yards. That's actually the best odds is what I'm seeing here on Betting Pros. It kind of fluctuates depending on sports books. 87.5 on FanDuel. Bet365 doesn't have a lineup, and then DraftKings has him at 86.5. Let's see, where do they have him at 80.5? I don't see him at 80.5. All I know is that Betting Pros said they have him at 84.5. Is where he opened, and then 80.5 is the best, but I don't see where that's at. So I would still take him at 87.5, 86.5. That's fine. The second play I would take is Dallas Cowboys. I like them on the money line at plus 145. I'd be fine taking them at plus 3.5 this week. I look at it as no Lane Johnson. They're at home. A lot of drama with A.J. Brown this week. Backs against the wall. Defense has improved a little bit. I think Dallas wins this one. I would if you're not confident in the money line, take them on the points. That's fine. But I like that play as well. And then my last play that I would take is I would take the under on Tyrod Taylor's passing yards this week. His passing yards are set. Where are they? At 181.5 against the Ravens. Barely anybody to catch the football there. I would take Tyrod. That's my analysis. Nothing deep there. 81.5. Garrett Wilson's not playing. You can actually get him 189.5 on the under on FanDuel. So you can actually get that. It opened up at 181. It went up to 189. So that would be what I would take. I'm hitting 3 more questions here. I'm going to only answer these. I'll rapid fire it. Mayor Hurts this week. I take Drake May. He's my QB1 this week. We buy homes near you. 10-team standard league. Start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. Rice, Igbuka, Henderson, Jettas, Diggs, or T. Higgins. I would start T. Higgins. I would start Rice, and I would start Igbuka. I would sit Henderson, Jettas, and Diggs this week. Yeah, I think that's fair. You can maybe slide in Diggs over Rice or Igbuka, but I feel pretty confident about those 3. And the last one here from Ryan, and then we're getting out of here. Pearsall or Charbonnet, half-point PPR. Definitely taking Pearsall. Pats or Falcons defense. I'm taking the Pats over the Falcons. I'm not super high on the Falcons. I know they're playing the Saints, but honestly, too many trap games for them. They just don't seem to show up, and they're just not a team that I trust right now. Last one from Adam, since he came in, and then we'll get out of here. Trade away JSN or Sharbs for Bijan and Tet. I would take that. Bijan and JSN are pretty close to wash. You're getting Tet as a pretty solid upgrade over Sharbs.
Yeah. Peter, thanks for having me. Great questions, great guys. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope the players treat you well, and there's a lot of wins.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us, guys. I think Hoff might be back on tomorrow. I might be joining him, game time decision there. But one of us might be live tomorrow. And then, as always, we will be here Sunday morning to help you out with your start sit questions. If you haven't already, check out my DST playoff video. We got a ton of content coming out. And good luck with your matchups. We'll see you.